Our boy is someone who lost everything but gets a second chance to become an idol. Our protagonist always dreams of becoming an idol. However, things never go as planned. Today is the day he remembers ending his life. He stands on a bridge and begins reflecting, questioning when his life started heading south. He first wonders if it began the day he accepted the offer from a small agency, or perhaps the day he discovered the true colors of his group, or maybe the day he becomes crippled by an accident. In the end, it does not matter because everything is completely ruined. When he checks his phone one last time, he finds a bunch of useless messages from his group. Our boy tosses his phone into the river. But then he remembers something. Apparently, this is the day it all begins. The day he sacrifices his appearance spot for someone else. That person pleads with him, explaining that it is his only chance to debut as an idol. Now, looking at the guy's image on a billboard, he wonders if things would have been different if he had refused. However, he reminds himself that nothing can be done at this point. Thus, he jumps into the river and swears that if he is reborn, he will never become an idol again. But that is when something strange happens. A system window flickers to life, claiming he has been recognized. Before he can understand what is happening, he opens his eyes and sees the very person who took his appearance spot. He is visibly surprised and confused when he hears Kim Minky requesting his appearance again. Kim Minky asks what is going on while our protagonist observes the surroundings. He begins to wonder if this is a dream or one of those moments where life replays itself at the moment of death. Regardless, something is different. He feels an intense headache while Kim Minky continues to pester him. Fed up, Kim Minky finally shows his true colors. He grabs Yuha by the shirt and demands to know why he is being ignored. Kim Minky insists he needs to debut because he is already 23 and knows he will not get another chance, while our protagonist is in a better position. He is younger and can do anything. Yuha lets out a satisfied laugh, as if he has finally figured out that the world is not flat. Apparently, he understands that this is the very day the fool steals his spot. Kim Minky stares at Yuha, laughing in confusion. Our boy then asks if Kim Minky has lost his mind, because now he swears he will not make the same mistake he made 6 years ago. Of course, Kim Minky becomes even more confused. He tries to reason with the protagonist, or at least that is how it seems, before suddenly pushing him down the staircase. Wickedly, he comments that this is how things work in the industry and calls the protagonist a selfish bastard. Yuha closes his eyes and braces for impact, but the system window flickers to life once again, displaying a tutorial screen. Yuha stares at it as it explains that a roulette is spun to decide his fate. Of course, Yuha does not comprehend what this roulette or fate-changing nonsense means. Seeing his lack of response, the system automatically makes the choice for him. It changes his destiny to the correct one. As a result, the falling Yuha suddenly switches places with Kim Minky, as if reality itself bends like a scene from Matrix. Kim Minky struggles to understand what is happening, but it is already too late. Yuha remains in shock, processing what just happened, before the system pops up once again. By changing his fate, he unintentionally unlocks an achievement and avoids a misfortune from his previous life. Later, Kim Minky is rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. The medics reveal how serious his injuries are, while Yuha finds everything strange. Kim Minky suddenly switches places with him while he is falling down the stairs. On top of that, the system window appears and rewards Yuha with luck points for completing the tutorial task. Once again, Yuha begins recounting everything that happened when he lost everything, starting with the accident that takes his parents' lives. Eventually, he drops out of school and even fails to debut. But then an opportunity presents itself. A program called Design Your Idol is launched. This program is the first of its kind, a survival show where multiple trainees from different agencies compete. His own agency chooses him as a representative. He accepts, seeing it as his last opportunity, and everyone expects the program to fail. However, his spot is stolen by Kim Minky, who even pushes him down the stairs and calls him a selfish bastard. Unsurprisingly, Kim Minky debuts through the program, and the program becomes a massive hit. Meanwhile, our protagonist only sinks further into misery. Now, back in the present, Yuha sits before an interviewer. The lady pours himself a cup of tea and asks about his thoughts on joining the program. The interviewer is director Kwon from K-City Entertainment. In response, Yuha reveals that he wants to quit being a trainee altogether. Director Kwon continues speaking, then suddenly pauses as she realizes she may have misheard. She screams in disbelief. Director Kwon urges him to think things through, but Yuha's expression shows he has already made up his mind. You see, even though Yuha has successfully returned to the past, he does not know if he is willing to go through the same nonsense he endured in his previous life. On top of that, he doubts whether he can even do better if he joins the program again. In the middle of his inner monologue, something strange happens. The director pours herself tea once more and asks about Yuha's thoughts on joining the program. The tone makes it seem as if she is asking the question for the very first time. Seeing Yuha's puzzled expression, the director repeats the question and wonders aloud if something is wrong. The moment Yuha mentions quitting as a trainee, time reverses again. The time loop continues. Then the system appears and explains that if Yuha refuses to enter the main quest, progression will stop. In other words, time will continue looping endlessly. Yuha is absolutely horrified by this revelation. Worse, the system gives him no room for alternatives. In the end, he has to agree. He literally has no other choice. The director cheerfully gives him a quick rundown of the program. However, Yuha's mind is clearly occupied with something else. The director suggests they begin filling out his application, but Yuha is still trying to understand what just happened. As a result, the system flashes a message announcing the main quest. The mission description states that Yuha must join Design Your Idol to lay the foundation for his debut success. Completing the mission rewards him with 30 luck points, while penalties apply for failure. Additionally, the system highlights that if his luck points ever drop to 0, he will die. Elsewhere, the PD director of the program works overtime. Her colleague enters with coffee as she complains that she still has not found any real talent. The few candidates she has seen are barely good enough for an Instagram reel. The man understands her frustration and offers a suggestion. However, she continues complaining, saying they need someone with real spark and charisma to carry the program. While they're discussing this, a new message about an applicant arrives. The application comes from a small agency. Both of them hurry to check it. The PD executive instantly grows excited. She tells her colleague, Park, to get the press ready, because they have just found the perfect candidate. And it is none other than our protagonist. The day of the Design Your Idol program finally arrives. Yuha remembers how the concept is first coined by a group before the company officially introduces it. However, the members of that group have one major problem. They are not united. Still, Yuha thinks there is no rule stating that a group must be united from the very beginning. As the trainees begin introducing themselves one by one, Yuha finds himself wishing he could just go home. The reason soon becomes clear as the scene rewinds to the time he spends with the program's director. The director is surprised by how low his stamina is. He literally collapses during the preparatory stage shortly after practice begins. The director finds this troublesome and hopes to see better results from him over the next 5 months before the main event. It is also during this time that Yuha discovers he can check his stats. After giving the system confirmation, a status window appears, displaying multiple attributes, from singing and dancing to visuals and luck points. Yuha notices that many of the attributes are locked. Worse, he discovers his stamina rank is D-. He laments that even after training so hard, his stats are still at rock bottom. All he can do is hope things improve before he is called onto the stage. When his turn comes, Yuha steps forward, radiating confidence. He decides to play by the system's rules and plans to drop out in the 4th round. Meanwhile, the MC introduces him as the jewel of his agency, branding him as some kind of prodigy. As he walks to his seat, whispers about him and his agency spread rapidly. He has barely made his appearance, yet he is already receiving hostile glares from trainees of other agencies. Naturally, Yuha wants no part in that drama. He casually sits down and exchanges greetings with the idol beside him. With all 100 trainee idols present, the MC officially announces the start of the program. He explains that Design Your Idol, also known as D-Roll, is a project created to form the perfect and ideal idol group. He adds that the final seventh member will be selected through votes cast by the idol makers. The contest consists of 4 rounds, but including the initial testing and evaluation, it effectively becomes 5 rounds. From start to finish, idols are ranked entirely by votes. Anyone who falls outside the ranking is eliminated. The MC then introduces the mentors who will monitor their progress and act as judges, each one a well-known figure in the industry. Yuha feels slightly overwhelmed by the lineup. He also feels pressure, as he is the only trainee from a major agency. In the past, that fact alone would have generated massive hype, which is why today's evaluation feels especially important. This is also the same process Kim Min-ki once used to gain recognition. Keeping that in mind, Yuha knows he must avoid elimination in the first round and aim for a moderate evaluation. But the question remains, can he achieve that with such ridiculous stats? Regardless, he steadies himself and reassures himself that he can do this. Soon, grades begin to be handed out. Several trainees are eliminated on the spot. The judges call up the next trainee from Vibest Entertainment. The man introduces himself, revealing that he has trained for 7 years. Yuha recalls that he was once an idol from a disbanded group, which quickly becomes a hot topic among the trainees. The man receives a flood of hateful comments. However, his performance is simply too outstanding, and he is never outshined. One of the judges is impressed, remarking that 7 years of experience truly shows. As expected, he is awarded grade A. Soon, it is Yuha's turn. 2 idols whisper among themselves, believing his skills should be decent since he comes from a big agency. Yuha steps onto the stage and introduces himself, adding that he has trained for 5 years. The judges greet him warmly and express their eagerness to see what he has prepared. The music begins to play. One of the judges instantly recognizes the song and reveals that it is a solo track created after he left K-City Entertainment. Yuha sings and performs flawlessly, hitting every note. One idol watching from behind comments that Yuha seems decent, but feels like he is missing something. In contrast, the idol sitting beside him watches with glowing eyes, as if he has just found exactly what he has been searching for. The thing is, the song our boy performs focuses more on singing than dancing. The idols comment on his impressive vocals. Although the performance lacks energy in some areas, it is still pleasant to the ears. Above all, our protagonist carries himself like someone who has been performing on stage for a long time. Perhaps this is why Aiden becomes interested in befriending him. Yuha finishes his performance. He does not dance during the song because of his ridiculous stats. In addition, one of his goals is to avoid drawing too much attention, so his performance is considered acceptable. Now, Yuha waits anxiously for the judge's response. After a brief pause, one of the judges speaks up and asks if our protagonist has any dance moves to show. As expected, even though the song does not require dancing, Yuha prepares for this possibility. A dance track begins to play. Our protagonist takes a stance as the judges watch intently. The next moment, their faces show a mix of disbelief and surprise. Simply put, our boy performs a basic routine. The basic routine is the very first set of dance moves an idol learns in their first year, and it fits the song perfectly. Naturally, some of the idols are taken aback. A few even struggle to hold back their laughter. Meanwhile, only our protagonist knows he is doing this because he lacks stamina. After successfully completing the dance session, a female judge acknowledges his effort, even though she is clearly surprised. Our boy thanks her, all while thinking he could collapse at any moment. Another judge joins the conversation. Looking through Yuha's profile, he notes that our protagonist has been a trainee for 5 years. This judge, Dumin, the vocal mentor, comments that Yuha has a good voice, clean high notes, and accurate pitch. However, he adds that this seems to be all Yuha has to show, considering his 5 years of training. Yuha acknowledges the criticism, saying he understands and will reflect on it. Another judge chimes in, agreeing with Du Min's assessment. However, she adds that Yuha has great potential. She introduces herself as Cham Mina, another vocal mentor. She expresses enthusiasm, and says she looks forward to Yuha's growth. Our boy simply thanks her. Then, the final judge enters the discussion, like a final boss. She bluntly states that our protagonist cannot dance. She is Jane, the dance mentor. Each of her comments feels like a heavy blow to Yuha. In short, everything about his body movement screams that he cannot dance. The rest of the idols find her terrifying. Still, Jane admits that she is curious about something. Despite her harsh words, Yuha remains calm. The judges begin discussing among themselves. The male judge comments that Yuha seems to have stage experience. Jane believes that this experience allows him to cover his weaknesses. They all find it interesting, considering he is only a trainee. Only the protagonist knows the truth behind it. Despite this, Jane insists that Yuha should focus on improving rather than merely covering his weaknesses. Yuha thanks her for the insight and advice. With that said, it is time to assign his rank. The judges discuss him once more. Jane states that Yuha is a rare gem. From her experience, there are two kinds of idols: those who are mediocre and those who can satisfy an audience. Yuha is undeniably the latter. Confident in his growth potential, she assigns his rank. Our boy is placed in D rank, and the system rewards him for reaching this achievement. Our protagonist uses this moment to reflect further on the system. He compares it to a raising game format. By completing tasks, he earns luck points. These luck points can be exchanged for resources through the system's roulette. He theorizes that he may be able to avoid certain penalties by managing his luck point balance. However, the main concern is how future quests will progress. In other words, he does not want to risk playing the game without understanding the penalties ahead. Returning to his seat, Yuha watches as the next trainee is called to the stage. Other idols begin whispering about the newcomer. Yuha returns to his seat and observes the new face. The newcomer introduces himself as Kong Hyun-jin, a third-year trainee idol from Dream Actor Agency. Everyone immediately recognizes him as the son of the top actor couple. One of the judges cannot hide his astonishment, recalling how he used to carry him around back in the day. They discuss how Kong Hyun-jin seems to be the perfect combination of both his parents' looks. He is also the only idol present who comes from such a prestigious background. Although he once participated in a survival program like Design Your Idol, he was eliminated due to his weak vocals. This event leads him to join an actor agency instead. Naturally, people speculate that he plans to follow his parents' path and become an actor. However, as the entire stage watches him perform, they understand why he chooses to become an idol rather than an actor. Compared to our protagonist, Kong Hyun-jin dances much better. Yuha admits that the guy is talented, and his skills in both singing and dancing are incredible. Predictably, he is assigned an A rank. Later, the stage goes on break. The idols are handed food and drinks that look somewhat questionable. But our protagonist is a foodie and does not mind at all. He even wonders if he can get some leftovers, right before someone offers him a sandwich. It is Aiden, an idol from earlier, who happily offers him his food. Our boy thanks him, but looks a little confused. Aiden suddenly comments that he likes our protagonist's performance. Yuha thanks him, but wonders why the guy is being overly friendly. Regardless, Aiden praises his voice and asks how long he has been singing. Poor Yuha just sits there, getting bombarded with questions without even getting the chance to ask any himself. This makes him wonder why the guy is acting so friendly. Just then, his group is called to prepare, and our protagonist inwardly breathes a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Aiden looks somewhat upset, since he is just starting to get to know Yuha. He moves toward the stage, not forgetting to formally introduce himself as Aiden Lee. Meanwhile, our boy remains seated, looking genuinely puzzled. When they are called onto the stage, they appear together as a group. One of the judges notices their composure and looks forward to a great performance. Our protagonist notices this as well, especially since they choose their own music to match their concept. While watching their performance, Yuha finally remembers something. Apparently, Aiden Lee is the main vocalist of the group. He debuts with only 6 months of training. It is safe to call him a prodigy. Unsurprisingly, the judges praise the group's performance. They comment on how everything seems perfectly planned from start to finish. However, Chamina has something on her mind. She demands to know whether the entire setup is done by Aiden Lee. Aiden admits that it is, leading our protagonist to realize that the guy is not just a genius, but a producer-type idol. Naturally, the judges now see him as some kind of broken character. Meanwhile, each member of the group is assigned a rank, and Aiden Lee's rank goes without saying. But our protagonist knows a dark truth about Aiden Lee. He realizes that the guy will definitely leave his group within 2 years. Aiden Lee's background reveals that he grows up as a piano prodigy. However, he suddenly changes his interest and decides to become an idol. This lands him as the member with the strongest vocals in his group. When the news breaks that he suddenly leaves the group, it causes quite a stir. Our boy does not know the reason back then, but he is sure the guy has his own reasons. Not to mention, he is currently exhausted and just wants the broadcast to end. Apparently, our protagonist is not the only one. He is called aside along with other trainees for a briefing. The MC of the show appears with a radiant smile, clearly ready to make an announcement about the title song for the next round. The moment he reveals the title, everyone freezes. All the trainees' expressions immediately shift. Unsurprisingly, the MC notices their reactions but continues regardless. He suggests watching a short video that shows the dance routine. If the trainees are already petrified before, they now wear blank expressions, as if their souls leave their bodies. Meanwhile, the MC interprets this as the idols being fired up with motivation. Meanwhile, Yuha finds the idea of mastering those moves completely absurd. As the briefing continues, they learn that they are given 5 days to practice. The 6th day will be the evaluation day, and new ranks will be assigned. Performing the song on stage will come after the reevaluation. The MC cheekily adds that their rank, from A to F, would determine their position during the stage performance. In other words, the lower your rank, the less screen time you receive, which basically means you are screwed. With that said, they head to their assigned rooms, and the staff informs them about the details of the next day's schedule. Later, Yuha walks to his room with his belongings. The scene then cuts abruptly to the next day, where he meets his fellow idols. Since they will be training together, Yuha formally introduces himself and mentions the agency he comes from. A blonde guy goes next, introducing himself as Cheon Serim from Garam Entertainment. A dark-haired guy follows, announcing his name as Ju Danwoo from Season Label. Shockingly, the last to introduce himself is Aiden Lee. With everyone acquainted, they decide to head out for breakfast. Later, at the cafeteria, the group starts discussing their ages. Aiden Lee suggests that they speak casually, assuming they are all the same age. However, the blonde guy reveals that he is actually 19. When teased about it, Cheon Serim brushes it off. He then turns to the dark-haired guy, who reveals that he is 22. This makes him the oldest among the group. While everyone chats happily, our protagonist feels completely exhausted. Meanwhile, Aiden Lee notices something. Yuha's tray is completely empty, so he gives Yuha his own portion, claiming he does not eat much during breakfast. With a serious expression, he says that Yuha needs it more because he sings. Cheon Serim, now confused, assumes that Yuha wants more food. Before Yuha can even explain, Aiden Lee reveals that he already gave him his portion. In the end, the entire group hands over their bananas to Yuha. Yuha does not like this at all, since this is not the kind of attention he wants. Later, some of the guys decide to head back to their rooms first. Yuha feels relieved when they leave. Still looking exhausted, he wonders how he is going to survive the entire program. In the next scene, Jane appears on stage. Our protagonist admires her presence, but his plan remains the same, to quit at the right time. To do that, he needs to avoid attention. It is now the 4th period of dance class. She is absolutely furious with the group's overall performance. The poor trainees are being roasted for even the slightest mistake. However, her attention soon shifts to our protagonist and Ju Danwoo. It turns out the two of them are different from the rest. They have completely memorized the entire dance routine. Naturally, she wonders why Ju Danwoo still seems lost and our protagonist reveals that he has been practicing the moves repeatedly. In reality, he never expects the trainee's progress to be this slow. In his previous life, after the program becomes a huge success, everyone has to practice relentlessly. Now, this outcome unintentionally puts him in the spotlight. It is safe to say that his plan to stay low profile has completely gone into the trash. At first, it looks like he is put in charge of teaching the entire group the dance routine. But then Jane suddenly decides to make it entirely his responsibility. Of course, our protagonist feels as if his world is falling apart after hearing this. Since there are no complaints, she insists that they continue. And just like that, our protagonist's first plan of escaping completely fails. Later, our protagonist looks exhausted, as usual. Zixuan, a trainee from the D-Rank group, approaches him and asks if he could teach him the routine once again. Despite looking exhausted, Yuha agrees. He believes that by doing this, he can gain screen time while avoiding evil edits and cuts. The moment he agrees, the system suddenly pops up with a subquest. The mission title urges him to become the leader, rewarding him with increased stamina and dance stats. Our protagonist immediately decides to take full advantage of this opportunity. He begins giving suggestions to Zixuan, who expresses his gratitude. Seeing Yuha take the role seriously, Zhu Danwu also offers to help anyone who is struggling with vocals. With the two of them working together, one handles the dance routine while the other focuses on vocals. By the end of the session, our boy feels like he could pass out at any moment. As he wonders where everyone is gone, Zhu Danwu suddenly shows up. He asks if everything is all right and offers him a drink. Yuha thanks him, and the two discuss the training. Zhu Danwu notices how hard Yuha has been working, though Yuha himself does not see it as a big deal. Zhu Danwu unexpectedly reveals that he stays behind to practice because he is weak when it comes to dancing. Yuha simply tells him to keep practicing and promises not to disturb him. While watching him dance, Yuha immediately discovers Zhu Danwu's problem. He explains that Zhu Danwu is the type of idol whose body cannot keep up with his mind. Yuha is about to correct his mistakes, but stops at the very last second. The cameras are rolling, and helping Zhu Danwu would unintentionally give him more screen time. In the end, Yuha leaves the training room. He reminds himself that he needs to get eliminated, and that Zhu Danwu will eventually figure out how to dance properly on his own. Still, a lingering thought prevents him from leaving completely. The following day, during training, our boy complains about how tired he is from teaching the dance routine. Right on cue, Zhu Danwu appears with a bottle of water. He asks why Yuha always seems so tired. Yuha simply tells him that his stamina is low. Hearing this, Zhu Danwu suggests visiting the infirmary, but Yuha assures him that his condition is not serious. The next moment, Yuha opens his eyes and finds himself back in his room. The others are already there, and Cheon Serum hands him a snack, saying that Zhu Danwu wanted him to have it. Aiden Lee joins the conversation and gifts Yuha a box of massage tools. Our protagonist starts to feel moved by the group's actions. Just then, Zhu Danwu enters the room, asking if Yuha has received everything. Apparently, he is the one who informs the others about Yuha's condition. He also brings fatigue recovery drinks and pain relief patches. Once again, Yuha is touched and thanks them. Zhu Danwu tells him to take it easy, believing that his condition comes from how hard he pushes himself to help the group. He adds that he wants to support Yuha and does not want him to overdo it. Yuha can only stare at him, surprised by how sincere he is. In a rare moment, our protagonist decides to leave everything to Zhu Danwu, catching him off guard. Aiden Lee and the blonde trainee watch their interaction and note how different things feel compared to their A-rank group. They also comment that Zhu Danwu seems to be in a rush, possibly because he is aiming for C rank. However, the blonde trainee finds that highly unlikely. Instead, he believes it has more to do with tightening group bonds and aiming for debut. Later, our protagonist walks to the training room. He thinks about Zhu Danwu's expression earlier and never expects someone to be genuinely worried about him. He also wonders how Danwu has made it this far while acting like that. Nonetheless, he comes only to repay the guy. Zhu Danwu sees our protagonist and looks surprised that he shows up in the training room. Yuha explains that he also wants to practice. Ju Danwoo, on the other hand, suggests that he should get proper rest instead. This leaves our boy simply staring at him. Yuha then tells him to repeat a specific move from the song. When Danwoo does so, Yuha corrects him. He then offers to guide him by slowly demonstrating the move. The two of them continue practicing together. Danwoo's expression changes as he realizes how bad he actually is. Meanwhile, our protagonist notices that Danwoo improves quickly with just a little help. This makes him wonder why Danwoo never asks for help despite knowing he is struggling. Instead of focusing on himself, Danwoo is always busy helping others. Our protagonist mentally calls him an idiot for prioritizing others and forgetting that this is an elimination contest in the first place. Not to mention, this is exactly how things work in the industry. Our protagonist recalls his former groupmates, comparing them to Ju Danwoo. He becomes convinced that Danwoo is not the type of person who would sacrifice others for his own success. Someone approaches them during practice. Both our protagonist and Ju Danwoo are startled at first. They relax when they realize it is Aiden Lee and the blonde trainee. The two comment on them training so late at night. Our protagonist does not expect more people to show up. Aiden explains that they come because of Yuha. Apparently, he hears Yuha leaving the room, and Cheon Serim simply follows him. Ju Danwoo mentions that they are practicing the dance routine, prompting Cheon Serim to jokingly praise Danwoo's singing skills. Danwoo naturally wonders how he knows this. The blonde trainee reveals that Yua, their dance mentor, has been talking non-stop about it. Cheon Serim then offers Danwoo a deal. He promises to help with the dance routine in exchange for Danwoo helping him with singing. Watching them, our protagonist realizes how noisy the room has become. He considers quietly leaving while everyone is distracted. But that plan fails when Aiden Lee suddenly scares him by making a serious expression and asking him for a favor. The following morning at breakfast, our protagonist looks exhausted. He ends up pulling an all-nighter. Meanwhile, the others act as if they have no idea what causes his fatigue. Danwoo expresses concern and even apologizes, thinking it is his fault. Yuha assures him that everything is fine until someone approaches. An idol informs them that the staff are looking for Yuha, saying that it is his turn. Naturally, our protagonist is confused. The moment he hears the words family phone call, Yuha's expression freezes. Aiden Lee notices this as well when the idol relays the staff's instructions. Yuha does not waste any time and leaves immediately. He explains that in every survival program, there is always a segment involving family phone calls, and he already makes arrangements with his agency beforehand. Although a family phone call is an important card that can later help with recognition and debut, Yuha refuses to allow any interviews related to his family. Now, he can only stay in the call room, feeling suffocated. He tries to appear calm, knowing that the cameras may still be rolling. Soon, he hears a knock on the door, signaling that his time is up. The entire 3 minutes feel like torture. He admits that he has no one to call. Perhaps it is because this was the time when he lost his parents, and he is still suffering from the lingering effects of that trauma. When he returns to the cafeteria, Aiden Lee asks about the family call. Yuha simply responds that it's fine. Then, he shocks everyone by throwing away his untouched tray. He adds that he loses his appetite for some reason. Here is the reason our protagonist refuses to be interviewed. Stories tied to misery and overcoming hardship always sell well. If the media discovers that he is an orphan who is adopted and that he loses his parents before entering the competition, it would immediately turn him into the face of the show. Ironically, this is exactly what our protagonist wants to avoid. He just wants to stay low-key. Now, it is finally the day of the reevaluation. The judges are seated, discussing the results. The man wearing a hoodie comments disappointedly about the idol's performances. The judges beside him begin wondering aloud about the best criteria to evaluate the trainees. The woman with short dark hair says that learning ability and adaptability should be the main focus, since the industry changes at a fast pace. Meanwhile, the man sitting nearby believes that an idol's charm and aura also matter. However, someone disagrees. It is Jane. She believes that effort should be the main criterion, and that how much an idol has grown within just 5 days is what truly matters. The judges are convinced and decide to proceed with the evaluation videos. Meanwhile, the head of production feels uneasy. He fears that Jane will be stricter than usual, and it is partly his fault. He initially approaches her with a suggestion, but she refuses to listen. She claims she has a career to protect and already knows what the program needs. She even asks if he is trying to teach her how to do her job. The poor guy can only think about how much of a headache it already is to pick decent clips and create a powerful edit, given the generally poor performances. Now, Jane's temperament is only going to make things worse. Just then, a line from the song lyrics catches his attention. The voice on the screen belongs to our protagonist. The head PD immediately realizes that he is the solution to the problem. He also notices that the judges have a good impression of him, especially Jane, who looks genuinely amazed by his performance. It is safe to say that our protagonist's plan to stay out of the spotlight keeps backfiring. The head PD immediately turns to his laptop. His colleague looks confused by the sudden change in his expression. Ignoring him, the PD instructs his colleague to hand the D-rank folders to Jane for the announcement. The colleague is naturally confused by the change, but the PD simply tells him to do it. Later, Jane personally and cheerfully announces the results of the reevaluation. When our protagonist receives his result, he finds her bright expression unsettling. She begins praising his potential, saying that she notices at the moment she sees him. When our boy opens the result, he finds that he's been reassigned to rank 8 dot, which explains why she is so happy. Unfortunately, our protagonist wishes he could disappear on the spot. At the same time, the system appears and rewards him with a stat increase ticket. This leaves him puzzled. He expects a dance stat increase, yet he receives a general stat ticket instead. On top of that, reaching rank means he will now be competing against the best of the best. As he tries to understand how everything goes so wrong, a voice whispers his name. It is the idol he helped previously, thanking him. Apparently, he got promoted as well. Our protagonist recalls that the guy falls during his reevaluation test, but regains his composure and finishes strong. That is why he gets promoted. As for Ju Danwoo, not much can be said. The poor guy is completely crushed. He gives up midway through the evaluation after losing his rhythm. Our protagonist finds a shame, considering how hard Danwoo works, but things like this just happen. From experience, staying calm is also a skill in the industry, and mistakes are not easily forgotten. The trainees are reassigned to their new groups, and Danwoo ends up in C rank. Our protagonist calls out to him. He suggests that next time, they should practice together. Danwoo looks confused, but Yuha tells him that he is serious. With that, Yuha heads toward the A-rank hall. Inside the A-rank room, a staff member addresses them. He announces that they are candidates for the center position on stage. However, before proceeding, he has something important to explain. Out of the 15 trainees present in the room, only 5 will be chosen as centers through voting. Trainees from other ranks will also participate in the vote, so he advises them to relax. Meanwhile, our protagonist grows nervous. He knows they are being closely watched and wonders who will become a center. He is certain it cannot be him, since he has been trying to stay under the radar. Just then, a figure approaches him with interest. The red-haired trainee recognizes him as the one who rises from D rank to rank A. He finds our protagonist's potential intriguing. Unbeknownst to him, he has just made things even more complicated for our protagonist. Seeing him, our boy immediately knows the guy spells trouble, but he responds calmly, saying it is all thanks to his mentors. Later, after practice, Yuha informs us that the video will go live the following day. Because of this foolish stunt, he now worries about the public reaction. He fears being branded as some kind of exponential growth genius or something equally troublesome. Soon, the red-haired guy appears again and makes a snide comment about our protagonist's stamina. He finds it surprising that Yuha manages to make it this far with such poor health. Yuha knows the cameras are already off, so he decides not to fall for the provocation. However, the guy takes a step further, accusing Yuha of pretending to be weak. He even claims Yuha does it on purpose to build a sympathetic image. Yuha simply stares at him. He finds it a waste of effort dealing with idiots who judge others without understanding anything. It is not like he can explain the system to them anyway. In moments like this, the best thing to do is ignore the fool. This only makes the red-haired guy even more irritated, and he eventually stomps off. Our protagonist lets out a sigh of relief as he watches him leave. But then, another voice speaks from behind. Turning around, Yuha sees the child of actors. Apparently, this guy shares the same dull brain cells as the red-haired idiot. Now Yuha wonders where all this sudden hostility is coming from. The child of actors openly states that he hopes Yuha will not be chosen among the 5 idols who will represent the center. He also claims that it is impossible with Yuha's current skill level. This is exactly why our protagonist swears he never wants to become an idol in the first place. Just then, Aiden Lee appears and offers him a bottle of water. Noticing Yuha's expression, Aiden asks what happens and wonders if he misses something. But already frustrated, Yuha angrily snatches the bottle from him. At this point, he starts thinking of a way to end this miserable situation. In other words, he plans to get himself eliminated. He does not want to live a life dealing with idiots like the red-haired fool and the child of actors. Just then, the red-haired guy appears once again, this time trying to stir up rumors. Yuha listens silently as the idiot implies that the judges favor Yuha because he comes from a big agency. Hearing this nonsense, the child of actors finally speaks up. He reprimands the red-haired guy for making such remarks about the judges. He adds that if this is his way of causing trouble among the idols, no one will believe him. This forces the red-haired guy to backtrack, saying that he is only expressing his thoughts openly. He claims he is simply impressed that someone can jump from D rank to a rank. Meanwhile, Yuha is surprised that Kong Hyunjin speaks up for him. When Kong Hyunjin looks at Yuha more closely, he notices something odd. Yuha does not look as exhausted as usual after training. Curious, he asks about it, and Yuha replies that he is probably just lucky today. Of course, Yuha cannot say that his stamina increases thanks to the system. Just then, they are called to the auditorium for the main results. Yuha rushes toward the auditorium, leaving the child of actors looking suspicious and confused. Later, at the training area, Yuha reflects on how things never seem to go his way. 2 hours earlier, inside the auditorium, the system appears with a notification, shifting some of his stats to B rank. It also rewards him with a random luck roulette ticket. Yuha can only pray that the roulette gives him something good. Meanwhile, the MC steps onto the stage. He announces that the candidate voting has been completed and it is time to reveal the results. The first name called is the child of actors. Next is Do Ji Hyok, praised for his confident performance and balance skills. The red-haired guy is mentioned next, looking as if he has just hit the jackpot. After that, Aiden Lee is announced. Finally, the trainee with the most votes and the leader of the group is revealed. It is our protagonist. He is chosen due to his company recognition and center-worthy visuals. Everyone is momentarily stunned by this bombshell. Some of his friends try to act calm about it. As for our protagonist, he is suffering from success, and in the worst way possible.